Welcome to an oral history of the University of Laverne, a series created during Laverne's 125th anniversary year, 2016-2017, by the students and faculty of Honors 304-351. I'm Al Clark, Professor of Humanities, and I co-taught this course with Brian Best, Assistant Director of Instructional Technology, who is part of the Regional and Online Campuses Administration. This series is based primarily on oral histories contained in the university's archives in Wilson Library. Although some of the footage you will see was professionally filmed, most of the oral histories were shot with amateur equipment and with the intention of transcribing it onto paper, not screening it. This episode of our oral history is one that I personally created. It is called Brethren Heritage. To discuss the University of Laverne's Brethren heritage, it may be good to start with a description of the Church of the Brethren itself. The Brethren have always been hard to explain. Gladys Muir, on the same page of her history, Laverne College, 75 years of service, that carried the images of the four founders of the institution, shown here framed by a window from the Lordsburg Hotel, quoted a report in the Pomona Times-Courier in 1889 about the Dunkards, who intended to migrate to Laverne. Dunkards was what the Brethren were often called in the 19th century, as in the famous Dunkard Church at the Civil War Battle of Antietam. Professor Muir wrote that, quote, an attempt was made by the Courier to explain to the local people who the Brethren were, unquote. She noted that the newspapers said that, quote, they resembled somewhat the Quakers in their careful, industrious ways, and in their beliefs they were something like the Baptists. In many ways, the comparison to Quakers and Baptists was really quite accurate, and, indeed, still quite a useful device in 2016 to describe the Brethren 127 years later. Contemporary church members often respond to inquiries that the Brethren are one of the three historic peace churches, like the Quakers and the Mennonites, and Brethren today still practice adult baptism like their forebears did. Complicating matters for understanding who the Brethren are is the fact that the German Baptist Brethren who immigrated from Europe to Pennsylvania between 1719 and 1740 have split into 7 successor denominations as outlined in the September 2013 issue of the denominational publication, The Messenger. As the article points out, the Church of the Brethren is the largest of the 7 churches that trace their history and tradition to Alexander Mack's original group, but even the Church of the Brethren has only about 119,000 members in 2014. The other 7 churches who trace their roots to the outlaw baptism in Schwarzenau, Germany in 1708, seen here, all retain Brethren in their names, but differ from each other and from the Church of the Brethren in certain practices and shared beliefs. The Church of the Brethren, the Old German Baptist Brethren Church, the Brethren Church, the Dunkard Brethren Church, Fellowship of Grace Brethren Churches, Conservative Grace Brethren Churches International, and Old Brethren Baptist Brethren Church, New Conference. The editor of The Messenger at the time this article appeared was Randy Miller, a 1978 graduate of Laverne and a former Laverne magazine editor. The fact that the Church of the Brethren founded 6 historic colleges and a seminary, Bridgewater, Elizabethtown, Juniata, Laverne, Manchester, McPherson, and Bethany Theological Seminary, seen here from a page of the July-August 2016 issue of The Messenger available in Wilson Library, is a remarkable achievement and a testament to the importance of education for the Church of the Brethren and its heritage for the University of Laverne. It is noteworthy that the Brethren Church in Nigeria, EYN, an independent denomination founded by Church of the Brethren missionaries, who then turned it over entirely to the Nigerians, has a worship attendance of some 1 million people, nearly 10 times as many as all the Brethren in the United States combined, as suggested in this excerpt from the Church of the Brethren website. The Nigerian Brethren have suffered greatly from attacks by the Boko Haram. Further complicating matters for understanding the Brethren is the fact that the Church of the Brethren, although it is organized into districts and holds an annual conference to debate polity and shared beliefs, is deeply committed to congregational organization. Interestingly, the denomination held its annual conference twice on Laverne's campus, one in 1928, just before the Great Depression, and again in 1941, just before the United States entered World War II, both times gathering in a large tent erected in Sneaky Park, then Laverne City Park, as shown here in photos published in the Brethren of Laverne, with delegates housed in area homes. Local congregations such as the Laverne Church of the Brethren call and release their ministers and make many local decisions on practice, beliefs, and service projects. Brethren see themselves as individuals, and both members and congregations differ rather dramatically in practice and beliefs, especially between congregations in the eastern United States and those in the west, but even locally here among Glendora, Laverne, and Pomona. Note the gay pride flag on the marquee of the Laverne Church of the Brethren, a controversial issue in the denomination today. For a time during the 1970s, there were actually two churches of the Brethren in Laverne, one in the current church building and one called the Fellowship Church of the Brethren, now melded into the Pomona Fellowship Church of the Brethren, that had split over social practices and met in this sanctuary 2 blocks away, a building then owned by Olympic gold medalist, Wheaties breakfast champion, Brethren minister, and a Laverne adjunct faculty member, Bob Richards. This building is now the House of Praise.
Came as a freshman, there were 2 churches. We called them the Big B and the Little B.
Oh.
That's what the students called them.
Oh.
So the break-off, there was this break-off in the early 70s, late 60s, that went over and created the Fellowship Church around the corner, and it was very small, and it was free ministry, and at least 2 of the professors were on that free ministry group, and they were Glenn Crago and Verne Eller, both of them quirky. And I'd walk past the Little B and see who was preaching. And then I would decide where I wanted to go to church.
Today, in 2016, the Church of the Brethren is in disagreement on several social issues being debated across the United States, but it agreed in this description of the denomination adopted 2 decades ago, continuing the work of Jesus peacefully, simply, together. It is remarkable how this contemporary Brethren tagline echoes through the University of Laverne's history, in its peace stance, in its ability to manage through years of meager budgets, and in the sense of community that faculty, staff, students, alumni, and trustees all prize.
The values and ethos of this university have been shaped by its Church of the Brethren heritage. And so in honor of our 125th anniversary, I want to offer a particular piece of wisdom from this tradition as we face these challenging times. The Church of the Brethren has summed up its philosophy of ethical living with these 3 words: peacefully, simply, together. Peacefully, a commitment to nonviolence, using peaceful means in the work for peace with justice. Simply, living simply with others, taking only what you need, sharing what's yours, approaching one another with humility, living one's values without fanfare or need of recognition, but rather motivated by a simple desire to contribute to the common good. Together, a deep commitment to community and our common humanity, but without giving up one's individual conscience. Together, working tirelessly to alleviate the suffering of our fellow creatures, to dethrone ourselves from the center, and to honor the sanctity of every single human being, treating everybody without exception, even our enemies, with absolute justice, equity, and respect. Peacefully, simply, together. This is the wisdom of the tradition that founded the university. May it bless us in our life together.
The heritage of the Church of the Brethren on the University of Laverne can be traced over the decades in this stone cornerstone, bronze plaque, CO memorial, and peace pole. But it also is in the words of institutional leaders, such as W.C. Hanawalt, president of Laverne College from 1902 to 1908, Harold Fosnock, president of Laverne College from 1948 to 1968, a half century later, and Warren Carter, class of 1958, longtime trustee, all three of whom emphasize service.
Faith is one of the qualities that built Laverne, from Lordsburg College to the University of Laverne. It's faith, really, that is the root and the culmination of all of the other virtues that make life worthwhile at a place like this. And I would remind us, as it says in the biblical scripture from James, that faith without works is like... The longevity of Laverne is probably due to several things. I think its heritage is significant. Its heritage in the Church of the Brethren, built by men originally of the Church of the Brethren. And the Church of the Brethren has stood for service to humanity. And that service is as desperately needed, will be in 1991 as it was in 1891 or in 1948 when I came.
I grew up in church, which I was grateful for. I was glad to have that happen. But I remember my religious experience was the things that you couldn't do. You don't do this, you don't, they were just death on drinking and smoking and probably dancing in cars and stuff like that, compared to the things that you can do. And so, your spiritual walk needs to be one of living it out.
Perhaps the biggest re-imaging of Brethren heritage at the University of Laverne came after 1968, when the Board of Trustees appointed Leland Newcomer president, the first head of the institution who was not a Brethren minister. Dr. Newcomer built this innovative student center, now known as a Sports Science and Athletics Pavilion, to achieve national recognition, and he changed Laverne from a small, church-related traditional school into a national leader in teaching off-campus and non-traditional age adults, burgeoning with students. Before him, every president was a Brethren minister. Beginning with him, no president has been a Brethren minister. To compensate, Newcomer hired Laverne's first campus minister, John Gingrich, a young doctoral student grounded in the Church of the Brethren, but exploring as progressive a faith journey as Newcomer was pursuing in American higher education. Among other things, Gingrich worked to eliminate mandatory chapel and prayer before faculty meetings.
We had chapel, and I tried to assess how that went over, and it was my assessment that there was not much validity in what was going on, and so we took it to the faculty and said, we need to abolish this. People don't like it. Students resent it, and so we don't need it. And that was accepted by many people and resented by many people. Not many, just a few. The other heretical thing that I did was to convince the faculty that they didn't need to have prayer before faculty meetings.
While he was successful removing these vestiges of church-related practice, Gingrich did not succeed in his pacifist effort of opposing President Leland Newcomer's plan for offering the Verne courses on military bases.
Leland's first year, he started saying, we'll never exist if we said we have to go off campus. And then he said, we're going to go on to military bases. I said, what? And he said, well, we'll go on to military bases. And I said, that's entirely inappropriate for this institution.
You said?
But I went to him and I said, this is entirely inappropriate. And he said, well, I'm sorry, I'm going to go through with it. And I said, well, isn't it voted upon by the trustees? He said, yeah. I said, well, I'm going to contact the trustees. He said, go ahead. And I wrote to all the trustees. Remember Truman Northup?
Yes.
Truman was one of the church trustees, and we had a lot of church trustees at that point. And he said, Jesus would have done the same thing. He would have been there, he would have witnessed, and he would have tried to change the military.
The difference of opinion between Chaplain Gingrich and the Church of the Brethren members on the Board of Trustees over pacifism raises an apparent enigma in Laverne's Brethren heritage. On the one hand, the campus displays a peace bowl and conscientious objector plaque. On the other hand, these 6 war memorials commemorating the deaths of 2 students and 2 others during World War I, 5 students during World War II, 1 student in Afghanistan, and 1 student in Iraq, are decorated with flags each Memorial Day and Veterans Day. Although this juxtaposition appears irreconcilable, the truth is that it actually underscores one more Brethren value: personal conscience and no force or no coercion in religion.
The Church of the Brethren has believed that you use no force in religion, that you only ask people to accept the New Testament as the basis of their faith, and you did not ask them to accept a more demanding, dogmatic creed. And I think that left the instructors at Laverne free over the years to teach as they saw the truth and be intellectually honest and still be dedicated to the university.
Perhaps Chaplain Gingrich's greatest impact on Laverne and the world was on the students that he taught, particularly on 2 who continue to bring the Brethren heritage to the University of Laverne today: Reverend Susan Boyer, class of 1982, senior pastor of the Laverne Church of the Brethren, and Reverend Dr. Zandra Wagner, class of 1989, university chaplain and assistant professor of philosophy and religion.
Establish a kind of relationship where I wasn't trying to push them to be religious. I wanted them to be reflective, and I wanted them to see that a religious perspective is viable and not just, well, believe this and shut down your rational capacities.
John Gingrich was a big part of that. I took great classes from him in ethics and contemporary thought. The ethics class, I remember we had to write 2 papers, one at around the midterm and one at the final. And on my first paper, I got it back and it said B-. This is the most boring paper I have ever read in my life.
Wow!
And I was so offended. And I made an appointment with him, and I went in, and he said, could you just at least vary your sentence structure? He said, this is how your paper sounds. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da-da-da. I'm really grateful to him. I was so helped me when I went on to Claremont School of Theology to be able to write well.
Really, John Gingrich was the most influential. It was his class that introduced me to the breadth of Christian history and for me to have a much more critical way of approaching history and understanding the very tradition that I grew up in. But I would say even more than that, what John offered to me was, I had taken an independent study with him, or a directed study, and it was up to me to read, to generate ideas and questions and really engage with the material, to come up with the things that most interested me, to have these one-on-one conversations with John. And he knew that I was just being a passive learner, that I didn't come in with all these engaged questions. And at the end of the semester, when we met and he was going to share with me the grade that I was going to get in that class, he explained, I'm going to be giving you a B, which I was just used to getting A's, right? You do the work, you do it well, but and you just get an A.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think what he wanted to see was something that was much more complex and nuanced. It was about engagement and bringing your passion and bringing yourself in a way that said, I am being intentional with my learning. And he didn't see it, and he called it out, and I so appreciate it.
The progression of values change that the Brethren heritage at Laverne has undergone as it developed from a Brethren college to a multicultural university is well expressed in a message delivered to the Laverne Church of the Brethren on August 14, 2016 by Professor Gingrich. In these excerpts, he traces his own faith journey over the last 7 decades, a journey generally reflected throughout the congregation in the Laverne Church of the Brethren.
I was raised in a conservative Brethren context, and I appreciate much of that background. But I had my doubts at that point, believe it or not, that Catholics were Christians. I also believed that anyone who drank alcohol could not possibly be a Christian. I believed that God kept track of my frequent impure thoughts and would punish me for them. In addition, I believed that the adherents of other religions were doomed. My theology has changed. I believe that God's grace is not limited to one religious tradition, ours. We can be enthusiastic followers of Jesus and still acknowledge that persons from other traditions can experience a meaningful relationship with God. We need to be in dialogue with the other.
The progressive ideas espoused by the Laverne Church of the Brethren were also in the minds and hearts of key leaders at the University of Laverne, as once again the Brethren heritage was expressing itself in new ways.
I think there was a moment in the university's history about 6 years ago where there was a question whether or not the campus ministry program still had relevance here at the University of Laverne. And there were key individuals in certain roles, such as the now current provost, Jonathan Reed, the then provost, Greg Dewey, and a few other people who continued to see a vision for having something that connected with our Brethren heritage, that still connected our history around religion and spirituality as an aspect of identities students bring with them. But it wasn't going to be the same thing. It seemed to me that there needed to be a reconfigured office that was interfaith in focus, because our student population had shifted. We wanted to make sure that it was an office that could engage students around meaning and purpose, but that wasn't so specific to Christianity or Church of the Brethren, but yet drawing on that Church of the Brethren history as an anchor, as a way to connect the past to the present and future. But it seemed to me that if we were going to keep the position, it needed to be reconfigured given our student population, given what the world is right now, given the context of the United States and world politics, that can really engage students in a meaningful way that sets them up, up well, both engaging religion, but also developing themselves spiritually if that's something they desire to do. So we got to ride that wave together, along with a few other key institutions throughout the United States. And it's been a really fun and empowering and great learning experience together to learn what it means to include religion, religious diversity, interfaith cooperation within a higher ed context that's in a secular environment.
The interfaith chaplaincy is built on 3 strands: religious pluralism, brethren tradition, and human spirituality.
There is the strand that is making sure we are engaging students around religious pluralism, religious diversity. And I see that as intersecting with our broader mission statement around diversity and inclusivity. And in that vein, I really am working closely with our Chief Diversity Officer, with our Multicultural Student Services Office. This is our joint goal, right, to help students engage in diversity so that then when they leave here, they are well prepared for a diverse society. So that is, yes, that's one really important strand. And there's skills associated with that, not just the strand that you've just talked about. I feel it's so important for us as a university to feel a tangible connection with our mission, our heritage, which gave us our values and mission as an educational institution. There are some core values, and we name them in a certain way today with 4 core values, but there's an ethos that the Church of the Brethren offered as a gift to this institution that has continued to grow, and it transforms itself all the time. But this key ethos around community, simplicity, humility, service, justice, peace, hospitality, welcome. These are really important foundational values that still shape who we are, even if it's just an echo at times. But sometimes I believe it's really important to help us reconnect with them in tangible ways. And so the other 3rd strand that I think I'm just now developing, and has been a much more quiet conversation, but I think is important. This interfaith work, this connecting with our heritage, right? It's all in the service of knowing that part of human history has included this idea of spirituality, right? It's been institutionalized in the sense of religion. It's the institution of the Church of the Brethren that created our institution, but there is this human interest in the idea of spirituality, and it can be defined in a multitude of ways. But I want there to be a space on campus where students can engage and explore deeply whatever meaning, purpose, spirituality, belief and practice that they think is important to them and will help sustain them, will help guide them, will help give them what am I looking for, an anchor.
In conclusion, as this dove carries an olive branch across a golden sun in a turquoise sky on this mosaic at the Laverne Church of the Brethren, 4 administrators key to embracing the university's Brethren heritage, past, present, and future, reflect on it. Julia Wheeler, Director of Church and Interfaith Relations; Jonathan Reed, Provost and Professor of Religion and Philosophy; Zandra Wagner, University Chaplain and Assistant Professor of Philosophy and Religion; and Devorah Lieberman, President and Professor of Communications.
Xandra has created a interfaith scholars program. And so that is another stipend-driven program where students who are interested in faith, it's fairly new. Like, this is the first year that we've had it. We just found a donor, and so we're starting that endowment.
What kind of tradition does the donor who wants to build an interfaith program come from?
Yeah,
Is this a...
Exactly. This was a Brethren.
Oh, it was a Brethren.
This was a born Brethren person.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and this person knows that the world is changing, but spirit is important.
Yes,
and it doesn't have to look like Brethren. Xandra is more focused inward, and I am more focused outward.
I see.
And yet, with my interfaith work with her, I'm doing a lot more student activities and support on campus. And the other part, where the expansion for the church relations, the Brethren Church, is what I'm finding is more and more admissions work. Even maybe 2 or 3 years ago, we had 2 Brethren students on campus.
Total.
And now, this year, we have 9.
You know, the more I think about this, Lordsburg College, 125 years, was founded by German immigrants who came to Pennsylvania. And then, because of the opportunities and the optimism they had, opportunities in agriculture, they came to Southern California.
Right.
And they were mostly farmers. And they saw education as a vehicle to improve their families' lives and their own lives. So they knew they needed to found a school and a college. Mm-hmm. And they did. And here we are 125 years later, and so many of our students are descendants of immigrants or immigrants themselves.
Right.
So many of them, if not themselves, their parents or grandparents, came here to California to work in agriculture. And so many of them hope that education and expect education to be a vehicle for social mobility that betters their families and helps improve their communities. And it's this remarkable continuity over 125 years. It's not lost on me that though the population has totally changed in terms of demographics, that the core values and expectations about what an education should be, social mobility, social justice, promoting peace, promoting communities, supporting families, is very much alive at the University of Laverne.
Wow.
And I think that's what makes this place exciting.
Here we have an opportunity to build a center for spirituality, interfaith cooperation, and multicultural advancement. This is like being able to bring together so many of our core values of the institution into a space that is hopefully super engaging with students so that they can be navigating diversity and their deepest values and figuring out ways to engage it in their academics as well as engage it out there in the community, right? So hopefully this is a flowing space that hits students at lots of different levels. It will have a beautiful signature space that will be not only peaceful and reflective and meditative, a space on campus that you can come and just decompress when you need it. And hopefully we'll have classes there on mindfulness and meditation and yoga and qigong and tai chi and things that help you integrate your mind, body, and soul. But along with this beautiful signature space, I anticipate that we will have a beautiful entrance or foyer that helps all of us feel this connection between our Church of the Brethren heritage and who we are today as this multi-religious, multicultural university. But that brings in this solid foundation, all these core values that the Church of the Brethren offered and gave as a gift to this institution. And so I hope that space brings clearly these values of peace and hospitality and welcome and community and service and justice, because those are the things that all these intangible values that we want to help make tangible as students do the hard work of learning and increasing their knowledge and increasing their skills. But what are the dispositions that is that running stream underneath that create people committed in ways that have integrity and honesty and that are trustworthy and that build a world that we can be proud of. So if a building can do all those things, I don't know.
We talked about intercultural, we talked about diversity. So the chapel, which is the center of our campus, it houses our values and what we've done for 125 years. So the new chapel that's going to be going in its place is going to be named something like SIM, the Center for Spirituality, Interfaith Cooperation, and Multicultural Advancement. So spirit, interfaith, multicultural, it's those three things together, bringing the faculty together, the students, the community. It's those things together. That's what we need in this world. I mean, you look around us, in this world, the international terrorism and problems have to do with the tension between interfaith, culture, and a lack of respect, spiritual understanding.
Yeah.
So having that together and having a huge, I think we have this huge initiative on campus led by Sandra Wagner, who is one of the most individuals that I've respected more in my life than just about anybody.